Hey everyone, Ben here. Welcome to another episode on the Stellar Work podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Luke Hohmann, a true veteran in the Agile product development community and the mastermind behind Software Profit Streams. We're diving into how the link value profits, while profit is crucial for sustainable growth, and the essential role Agile practitioners play in shaping the economics of the organizations. Whether you're an Agile coach, developer, or business leader, this conversation is packed with insights you won't want to miss. So let's get started.
There's a lost in value talk, we're stuck on repeat. But profit is the language when you really want to lead. Build something good, make it last for long. If you can't pay the bills, the work is all gone.
Hey Luke, welcome to the show.
Hi, Benjamin. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much for jumping in on the episode. I've not yet completed your book, but I'm just about to do so. I'm currently stuck with the pricing, so I'm really, really glad having you here. So you can maybe answer a couple of questions to me and help me out with that. But before we dive into this, first of all, I think some of the folks here listening to the podcast from Europe might not have heard of you yet. Maybe we could start with you introducing yourself and talk a little bit about who Luke Hohmann is and what you're doing.
That would be fantastic. Hi, everyone. My name is Luke Hohmann. I have been a longtime member of the Agile product development community. I helped form, as part of the Agile Alliance conference series, the first Agile Alliance Agile conference in 2003. I've served on the board of the Agile Alliance. I have produced the Scrum Alliance Collaboration at Scale webinar series, which was a very large and successful webinar series. I'm known for a few books. The author of Innovation Games is one of them. I am a builder, bootstrapped and built a B2B software company and sold that. I am an investor, so I'm an LP in a venture capital firm. I sometimes do some angel investing. Mostly right now, I focus on helping companies design sustainably profitable solutions over the course of the solution lifecycle. And I am on a mission to help the Agile community evolve. And I've helped the Agile community evolve many times in the work that I've done. Right now, I think we have over-rotated on a conceptual foundation called we're going to deliver value, but it's a relatively weak conceptual foundation because people haven't defined value and people then don't know how to actually create a sustainably profitable company. And if you don't have sustainably profitable solutions, you don't have a sustainably profitable company. So all the great stuff that we want to do is eventually going to go away because we can't pay for it. So I'm on this mission with my partner, Jason Tanner, and my colleagues in both Applied Frameworks and our global partner community to help make this step happen in the Agile community.
Why do you think the people working within the Agile community should care about profit? Isn't it just you have to build something for less than you sell it and then you're good to go?
Well, at one level, that is true. At its most fundamental level, profit means I've been able to create something for less than it cost me, and I made a profit. I mean, yes, at some level, that's true. I think the difference is that for example, a growth company who doesn't understand the value that they're creating and looks at their economics can say, I'm pricing my offering and I'm charging X. It costs me Y to produce it, so therefore I'm making a profit. But let's say that you're growing fast, and I don't want to pick crazy growth like 200% a year, but let's just say you're growing at a 30 to 50% rate, which is not uncommon for a successful tech firm. I've experienced those growth rates in some of my companies. So you're growing at 30 to 50%. Well, that means at some level, your costs are growing too. And what we find is that people who do cost-based pricing as opposed to value-based pricing, they get into trouble as their company grows because they forget to be inclusive of the total costs associated with the growth of the company. For example, maybe your customer support team is growing And when you started, all you had were your engineers, right? I'm a small startup. We're a bunch of engineers. We deliver our product. We're growing. Now we need customer care, or we need customer success, or we need to hire the second or third salesperson. And so sounds easy, but many times people don't keep track of their costs in cost-based models. And so their unit economics and their margins start to erode to the point where sometimes they're not retaining their profit. They're not still profitable. And I can give you other examples, but that's an example why profitability and pricing and the system of profit needs to be actively managed over the course of the solution lifecycle.
But what has all of that to do with, like, let's say an agile coach or a scrum master? You said you want to help out the agile community. So how does a scrum master or an agile coach fit into this?
Well, that's a good question in the sense that how do we all fit into this, right? I don't want to highlight only the role of the scrum master or the agile coach. I think that we all have a responsibility as employees of an organization to contribute to profit. So at one level, I would turn that around, Benjamin, and say, what is the role of the developers in contributing to profit? What is the role of product managers or product owners or scrum masters? So my take is that if the agile coach is only focusing on process elements, they're missing the opportunity to make a larger contribution. And we're seeing this in the community, right? You're seeing agile coaches posting, oh, I lost my job, or so such and such a company is firing the agile coaches. Well, why would they be firing an agile coach? They're no longer providing value. Well, okay, in reality, they're a cost that is too great to the company. And so the company wants to make a profit, and they've decided that that's the place they're going to cut.
I think I have experienced like one of the perfect examples, at least in my mind, for this. So I was attending a VC conference here in Germany. It's hosted by one of the more prominent VCs in Germany. And it's a tech and management conference. And one of the speakers there was a manager from Google. And the idea behind her talk was, how does Google build high-performing teams? And she mentioned a couple of things regarding how people feel, how to engage them, how to give them breaks, how to feel safe within your workspace, and all of the perks that Google gives to them. And then I was at a conference with a friend who's working as an agile coach in another company, and he was writing all of that down and was like, oh, I'm getting back to my team and we're going to see if we could benefit from this as well. If Google does it, why should it be bad for us, right?
Right.
And we just met a week ago, and he was like, I ran the numbers, this is so expensive. And I was like, yeah, you can only afford that if you have the profit margins of Google, right? If you don't have the profit margins of a monopoly, you're probably running into a deficit with all of that spending. Not what the costs are, but the time you take from the developers, testers, from the people working within your team, and putting that towards non-value adding activities. Non-product value adding, not profitable activities, profit creating activities.
That's right. All I'm going to say is, Benjamin, everyone listening, listen to Benjamin. There's a phrase in Silicon Valley that doesn't always get translated to the outside world effectively. But one of the things that we tell our clients, because I am based in Silicon Valley, I live in the middle of Silicon Valley, and I work a lot with global companies. And one of the things I remind them is, you can't innovate like Apple, or you can't innovate like Google, because you're not Apple and Google. And so practices that are simply transported from one company to another tend not to work unless you understand the deeper principles behind those practices. And then once you understand the deeper principles behind those practices, then you can find the mechanism by which those practices might transfer. So when you look at the practice of, say, Google offering free lunches, or say Google offering this campus feel, well, you have to remember when Google was started, it was a bunch of really young people who didn't have families, for example. And when I moved to Silicon Valley, I would hang out a little bit more at night with other people. And then I found my life partner and my wife, and we had kids, and it was an easy choice. I'd rather hang out with my family at night after work than stick around and have a beer. And so you have to really kind of pull back and understand the context in which a practice was developed and how to get to the deeper principle of what that context and its application in your work might feel like.
Yeah, 100%. And also, I think this is also changing because the environment of the macroeconomic environment is changing. So profitability is always relative to, let's say, what the stock market returns, what other investment categories promise on returns. So if the Fed is adjusting the interest rates, it's basically affecting your margins because you could have spent that money somewhere else and maybe got a better deal out of it. So you
Agreed.
would be constantly evaluating your profitability on it.
And profitability, to your point about how Google was able to grow, right? Profitability is associated in Google's model with cash flow and implementing a certain set of practices enables you to continue to grow your business. If I want to be a company and I start my company and I'm successful with offering one, well, that typically fuels money to do one of two things, and typically both. You're going to continue to improve your current offering, but then you start to invest in a portfolio of offerings. Sometimes you'll develop them organically, or sometimes you'll do what Google did and you'll acquire YouTube or Rightly, which became Google Docs, et cetera, et cetera. So the benefit of profit expands beyond just the ability to pay your employees fairly, provide them with benefits, et cetera. It speaks to the business itself. And we can also see what happens when businesses start to lose profitability. And I believe that this is one of both the challenges and the opportunities in the Agile community. Going back to Agile and going back to Agile product management, if I've got a set of backlog of items, right? And I don't care what Agile method you're using, they all kind of boil down into some prioritized list of things to do. Prioritization and focus is one of the hallmarks of agility, right? We're going to build the things that create value. Well, if those things aren't creating value for the company and for the customers, eventually I'm going to lose the ability to create value. And that's an economic decision. But then, Benjamin, that also goes into the practices of pricing, the practices of packaging, the practices of market segmentation. Simply adding more features into your solution because you're doing Agile eventually runs into a problem. And I was teaching a workshop for 22 startups from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, here in Silicon Valley. So it was one of these incubator programs where 22 startups come over, they spend 8 weeks in Silicon Valley, and one entire week of that program is devoted to profit streams and helping them design their business models. And one of the startups was a little further along. They're actually in the market. And they asked the question, how do I know when I've got a packaging problem? And what we mean by packaging is for your different segments, are you offering the right functionality to the right segment? And I said, well, have you started to get customers it was a B2B company. Have you started to get customers push back on your offering saying that you're giving them features they no longer use and they want a discount? And the founder said, yes, that's actually starting to happen, and I don't know what to do about it. I said, well, what you need to do about it is you've got a segment problem. You started nice and tight and small with your offering, but you used Agile practices to keep adding features, and now you've expanded it so that you're serving a market segment with features that it doesn't need. So there's probably a segment that does need those features, otherwise you wouldn't build it, but you've got to bust up your offering to package it appropriately so that you can bill different customers for the set of capabilities that are aligned with their problems that they're willing to pay for.
And it's kind of a feature trap, isn't it? Where you just like I see that with Scrum teams who move and just like put out features but don't really get any real feedback. And if they get the feedback, it's more about whether people like the features or they don't like the features, but it's not really properly linked to. I find it quite hard to link that to the business, to link it to the business strategy and moving forward.
Well, there's a difference between liking a feature and paying for a feature.
100%.
And there's a difference, and you'll, for the readers, or for the listeners, Benjamin is about halfway through the book. And so right now you're in the pricing section where we actually talk about how do I set the price. Later on in the book, you're going to see some ideas about how to prioritize your backlog items. And we try to keep the prioritization process both economic and simple. And so the simple side of the prioritization deals with how do you bucket your features, meaning how do you actually organize your features? Well, one set of features can be for bringing in new customers, and the other set of features can be for reducing churn or reducing customer defections. And the third bucket is operational improvements or technological infrastructure investments that you need to make as part of being a software vendor. And an example of that might be you're using Flutter or Angular or React, and the libraries upgrade to correct for some security flaws. And so you've got to make some investments into your solution to maintain currency with the software libraries. It's kind of like if you were in a manufacturing facility and you had to take down your cutting machine and sharpen the blades, right? You have to kind of maintain currency. But let's go back to this notion of reducing customer churn versus bringing in customers. We often find organizations over-investing in features that will draw in customers and under-investing in features that stop churn, but it's actually stopping churn where you can find some of the greatest profit. And speaking back to Agile coaches, to me, if you're claiming that you're an Agile coach and you don't understand the economic implications of how you're coaching an organization, you're probably not good enough to have the mantle of an Agile coach. And we see too many Agile coaches right now who are focused on either process, and process is important, of course, or they're focused on, team health. Well, okay, great. Team health is great, but trust me, I've worked in organizations that are growing and making sales, and I've worked on in organizations that are not making sales. And isn't it kind of funny how when an organization is growing and hitting their numbers and profitable, everyone's happy. And when an organization isn't hitting their numbers and isn't profitable and market share is shrinking, free lunches and massages don't mean much to anyone because we want to be intrinsically successful. Yeah. And success in business is measured by profit.
Yeah. We want to see that we're making an impact.
Yeah. And we keep score with money. And some people don't like to hear that. I have a friend. This is an interesting question for you. I had one of our partners in Europe said, Luke, sometimes it's a little tricky in Europe because we think profit is a dirty word. And I said, well, that may be true, but I've been to Berlin and I think profit is okay in Berlin. And so I don't know what your perspective is, but I think Europeans may not talk about it in the same way that Americans do, but think that Europeans equally recognize that a company has to have a profit to sustain itself.
So, first of all, I cannot speak on behalf of all the Europeans. And second, like my personal opinion on this is, I really like do you know Naval Ravikant? Have you heard of them?
I do.
Yeah, so he said something that really got into my mind. He said, if you create value for society has an IOU, and we call that money. So it's just an exchange of value creation. It's like if you create something good for society, society will give you money for it, and you will buy stuff that someone has created to make society a little bit better. And that has its limitations because some things are addicting, some things are harmful in the long run, but feel quite nice in the short term. So the definition has its limitations, but overall, if you're running a profitable business, I think you're doing good to society. So
And I think that,
I
and I agree with you. I mean, I actually believe deeply, based on my experience in business over decades, that most business people are good and they're
yeah.
ethical and they are kind and honest in their business dealings. One of the things, though, that I want to pull on, like I want to pull this thread a little bit, is it's related to this notion of providing value. And let's talk about value and agile coaches and product owners in the agile community. People talk about value and they don't define it. And because they haven't defined it, they can't measure it, they can't understand it.
Oh,
And
you
then,
just play value poker and distribute value points to
yeah,
features, don't you?
yeah, right, right. And so,
Don't do that, by the way. If you're
yeah,
listening to this, don't do it.
yeah, don't do that.
If that's your first episode on the podcast, you might not get it, but don't do it.
Right, and don't do that. So in our book, as you know, we go through quite exhaustively customer benefit analysis, which is what are the tangible and intangible benefits of your solution. And for your tangible benefits, how do you quantify them economically? And for your intangible benefits, how do you clearly state what those benefits are? And how do you create proxies of their economic value? And the reason I bring this up is we were working with a different company. This one was owned by a private equity firm. We tend to work with private equity firms and VC firms because they are investing in founders who are often technical and haven't been taught pricing and licensing. So we kind of give them the foundation they need. But it was kind of a funny conversation, Benjamin, because we get to the benefit analysis and really digging into tangible and intangible value. And the founder said, sometimes I actually, in a remarkable moment of honesty, the founder said, sometimes I don't understand why the customers who buy from me are buying from me because I'm fighting a product from Oracle and it's got so many more features. And I said, well, let's talk about why someone might buy your offering. I said, talk to me. Tell me why customers tell you they're buying from you. He goes, oh, well, they tell us that our contracts are easier to understand. They tell us that when they need a change, that we're more responsive and that we deliver faster than Oracle because we're using agile practices. They tell us that our APIs are easier to use and that they're more modern because we're using GraphQL and it's efficient. And they like the way that we've structured our examples. We're just easier to work with. And I said, well, that's an intangible value that's driving your business. And we can put a number on that and we can start to use it in how we go to market. And we can use that in our pricing because we pay for premium luxury goods all the time. I mean, a car can get you from point A to point B. A Mercedes-Benz or a BMW is going to do it very nicely and in a way that is different than, say, a Kia or a Chevrolet. And we pay for those experiences. We pay for those intangible benefits. And I think that that's something that gets lost in the Agile community is people will say I'm providing value, but without actually writing it down and quantifying it, they don't know what the value is or how to use that to generate a profit.
But often those people are set in IT departments, software development teams, and which are rarely linked to the profits of the business, to sales, to marketing, to all of that. In most cases, at least here in Germany, if you're a developer developing a product, you're working within a cost center.
Agreed. So let's fix that, right?
Yeah.
I think that Benjamin, I think you've stated the problem. And I think that that's what we're on a mission to fix. If you're using the the Scaled Agile framework, You can think about this in terms of operational value streams, which create the solutions that customers are interacting with, and development value streams, which are often creating internal solutions or providing internal capabilities. Like, let's say you're working for an insurance company and your IT department internally is building your quoting tool or your actuarial engine or your investment allocation engine in terms of risk profiling for a life insurance policy. As a internal IT team building this tool that powers the business, you may not be aware of the economics. That is merely a problem of the Agile community that needs to be solved, not something we should celebrate. The IT team developers should, in fact, understand their role. And yes, they're a cost center, but you know who else is a cost center? Sales is a cost center. So is marketing. How about customer support? How about the CEO? How about the administrative assistants? You know, we are all cost centers to a business. So to say, oh, I'm IT and I'm a cost center, big deal. We're all cost centers. The question is, does the cost center structure create a profit? Can we take whatever cost centers we have and wrap them into something that generates value, and from that value generated, put a number on it to go all the way back to what you said earlier, right? What you said earlier. I still have to sell it for more than it cost me.
Hey, we're 26 minutes deep into the podcast and we haven't been talking about your book, which I really like. It's called Software Profit Streams. Can you give me a little bit, like for everyone out there, can you give us a little bit of an intro of what software profit streams are? Because as a former engineer, I have heard about value streams. That's what I grew up with. That's what the Toyota production system taught me. What are profit streams?
Profit streams are value streams that are specifically designed to generate a profit. So you can think of value streams as I'm going through a sequence of steps to deliver value to a customer. Now, there are some different, what I would say is macroeconomic ways of thinking about customer. If you're in the Deming style of thinking of a customer, then the customer is the next person in the sequence of value delivery. If you're a Peter Drucker style of business person, the customer is the person who actually pays for the products or services. Mm-hmm. And so Drucker people tend to distinguish between customers and users, which can have some utility. Deming people tend to look at flow, and they tend to look at the next step in the value chain. In both cases, the idea of a value stream is I have a sequence of steps that's delivering value. What we're saying is a profit stream is a value stream that is explicitly inclusive of the elements of pricing, packaging, and licensing, because software is not a physical good. Here's a book. I have a book in front of me. If I sell you this book, I have transferred the rights to you. Mm-hmm. You could burn it for heat. You could read it. You could put it under a table to raise the table up if the table is offsetting. But the rights are yours. Software-enabled solutions are different. I don't sell software, I license it. And therefore, it has a completely different economic basis because there's a license agreement. And when you look at the meaning of the value chain in software, it means something a little different as a value stream than hardware. And we wanted to create this book about value streams that are specifically associated with software, hence the name Software Profit Streams. Meaning if I've got a book, I may not be associated with software. However, once I have an ebook and a Kindle, now I've moved it into the realm of technology and software, and I've got to worry about license agreements and the meaning of intellectual property, etc. So what the book does is it's got a few principles that guide the development of a pricing choice. So when you think about pricing, many people think that pricing is a number. Pricing is not a number. Pricing is a system that generates profit. And so what we did was we took all of the elements, and one of my dear friends is Alex Osterwalder, and the business model canvas and the value proposition canvas. And I said to Alex, I said, there's really no canvas out there that deals with pricing. And he's like, yeah, there is none. And so I decided to build this canvas. And so what we did is, when you're building a canvas, you're taking a system. As an engineer, I'm an engineer too, so we'll appreciate systems thinking. We took the elements of the system and we identified them. Then we understood their relationships, and then we organized them into a sensible format. And then the sensible format gets kind of compacted into the rectangular shape of a canvas so that I can manipulate it. So software profit streams is a framework expressed through a canvas that is about designing a value stream explicitly for sustainable profits over the solution lifecycle.
So who would you recommend this to read? Like people working on a development team?
Not necessarily everyone on the development team. I do think, and there's a part of the book where we talk about the value exchange model. So let's go back to the book. Here's my book. I sell it. You give me money. A physical good value exchange model really only has one structure. Yet you bought a physical good. In software, because it's licensed, there's many different kinds of value exchange models. I could license the software to you for a period of time, whether or not you use the software. Or I could have a transaction, which is a defined and measurable unit of work. In just taking those two value exchange models, they are very, very different in terms of their back-end implementation. Let's say I've got time-based access. Well, now I need to know when the license term starts. I need to know when the license term ends. I might be working in Europe, and so I need to know GDPR and the impact of when the license term ends on the data in terms of how long I can retain the data privacy, the right to be forgotten, etc. Similarly, in a transaction model, I have to know the life cycle of the transaction. I have to know when it starts, when it ends. I have to know what the billing event is. I have to know what the auditing rules are of the transaction. I have to know data retention rules of the transaction, which may be different and often longer than the data retention rules of an individual using a SaaS service. So part of the book should be read by the development team, but the primary target of the book are business leaders, often defined as a general manager, a director of product management, a product manager, people in the pricing function. Benjamin, we are seeing significant growth in our consulting services associated with companies who have formerly been hardware companies and are now integrating software into their solution. And some of those
It's the same thing over here.
Yeah.
I have just that case just lying on that desk here.
Yeah. And so and we know software, Andreessen Horowitz, right? Software is eating the world. Software is going to become embedded in everything we do. Right now, the chair that you're sitting in probably doesn't have software in it. In the future, we know it will. It'll have sensors. And I just saw one the other day that has sensors about your posture, and it's got sensors that will make the chair warmer or colder based on the surrounding conditions. One of my favorite examples of a software-enabled solution in the field of horse racing was the saddles the jockey use are now IoT enabled, so that as the jockey is racing the horse in practice, they're sending thousands of data points per second, thousands and thousands of them, just like aircraft engines, to improve the performance of the jockey. Like, how far are you leaning on a turn, which is a big deal in horse racing. But we know we're gonna see that everywhere.
Yeah, we're going to see that on motorcycle races for sure.
Oh, for sure. If
that is like almost the same thing,
right? If it doesn't exist already.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how do companies who are moving into software or enabling their offering. A few years ago, this is a few years ago now, this story, we bought a new oven for my home, and the oven has app that enables me to turn on the oven remotely. It's an IoT enabled oven. Now, I don't know how much I really need to turn on the oven remotely. I mean, I can just go walk over and turn it on. But again, think about that from the manufacturer's perspective. Did they understand the license agreement of the data that they've collected in Europe? Did they account for upgrades? Because people are like, oh, I can build an app. Sounds easy, right? Okay, well, are you going to support Android and iPhone? And what happens when there's a security flaw detected in one of those operating systems and you have to upgrade your app? Because remember, in hardware, people design it and stamp it out and they're done. But they're often unaware that software has this more dynamic nature to it, where you're not going to hire a development team and then let them go. You're going to hire a development team and they're going to be building that software as long as you have that hardware.
Yeah. And it's also like bringing other fields to the table, like security, for example, right? If your oven has a Wi-Fi access, it might also have like sensing Bluetooth, so it could sense movement and number of devices, therefore maybe number of people within the household, and send that data to I don't know where.
Well, that's right. And Benjamin, I used to work for a security company. I used to be head of engineering and product management for a security firm. And when we start to think about software-enabled items, we start to think about, malicious actors, right? I don't really want a neighbor who's mad at me for whatever reason hacking into my oven, and when I'm cooking my dinner, turning my oven to 600 degrees Fahrenheit, or 300 degrees Celsius, and ruining my food. We have to. So going back to the book guides readers through the steps necessary to create profitable solutions. And what we mean by the steps necessary to create profitable solutions, we really mean the pricing, packaging, and licensing, including things like what is from the perspective of your customer. In the consumer market, we sometimes say, oh, I don't need an ROI to buy my phone, or to buy, tires on my car or something, because it's a consumable good or it's a small purchase. But there's plenty of things that consumers invest in where they do want to understand, for example, the ROI. Like, I might put solar panels on my home, and that's a significant investment. So how much of an energy savings am I going to see? And I might be willing to lower my energy savings because I know it's good for the environment. So that intangible value of, I feel good about what I'm doing for the environment, what's that worth? Well, you can actually quantify what that's worth by saying the amount of money the solar panel would save may not be as much as a person wants, or the payback period would be too long, but the intangible value of doing something good for the environment is actually quantifiable as that delta, and that's what it's worth. And by looking at these elements, we can help product teams create better pricing and packaging and licensing.
I think pricing on one hand and talking about return on investment is quite interesting, but it's also based on the cost that you put into your products, like the cost of the goods sold, right?
Sure.
And I wonder what your perspective on that is, because I see different tech companies calculating their cost of goods sold very differently, and are showcasing a really big part of their creative energy in putting the numbers together for what those cost of goods sold are. I don't know if you heard of the Peter Thiel company called Palantir.
Yes.
I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yes.
So they have a few customers here in Germany, and I found that quite interesting. So I dug a little deeper, called a couple of people, and there are also like people published about this not so long ago, that on the reports of Palantir, they would calculate their cost of goods sold, and they were fairly low. So they were priced on Wall Street as a software company. as being a SaaS business. But once you look into the project, at least what they did on the German market, they had to put in a huge number of consultants to really set up everything, because the data on those clients is really bad. It has a bad quality, it's cluttered, it has different formats. So you need like a huge amount of people to really set the client up for actually using that software. And in my perspective, that should be on the cost side of that product. But what Palantir did is they said, so they working with clients, so they help them with their data, and they propose new solutions and new features to them. So they must be marketing and sales, and accounted it onto marketing and sales.
Well,
So,
you're pointing out something that is actually quite endemic and is a pattern across all of enterprise software, not just Palantir. Enterprise software, especially in the data space, we know there's a lot of garbage in data, and we know that there's significant amounts of money spent on data cleanup and data warehousing. Like if you look at a data warehousing initiative, a significant chunk of the money is spent on getting the operational or transactional data through your ingestion pipeline and cleaning up and normalizing and getting it into your cubes to report on. But let's take a step back. That's one of the things that we talk about quite clearly in the book from the perspective of your customer, which is your total cost of ownership. In the Palantir side, from the Palantir's perspective, they're claiming to Wall Street, we're a SaaS company because this is what our margins are and this is what our costs are. But they're also not including in that analysis that you just described the total cost of ownership of the customer to get value. And one of the things that a company has to be aware of in their customer benefit analysis is how hard is it to get the value that you're promoting, and how costly is it to get the value that you're claiming. And I'm not saying that the Palantir system isn't providing real value, and neither are you, right? It can provide real value, but you're saying the total cost of ownership of Palantir is some amount of money spent on, this amount of money spent on Palantir, and this additional amount of money spent in the total cost of ownership to get the data in.
yep.
And from a perspective of Wall Street doesn't care. The investors may not care about the second, but they should be at least aware of it, because if that total cost of ownership is too high, it depresses the amount of money that you can charge in pricing. And this is a sophisticated analysis that we talk about in our book. If this is the amount of value that I can create, but to get that value, my customer has to have this total cost of ownership invested, then that actually depresses my pricing, because my customer isn't going to pay me more than the value that they're getting. And so if this is the total value, the total cost of ownership serves to lower the ceiling of what a company can charge in their pricing. So this is part of the homework. And I don't know if I'm going to be too bold in this next statement, but I think part of the reason the Agile community needs this is because the Agile community has gotten lazy in its determination of value. It's easy to say, oh, I'm providing value, but pricing requires you to do homework that is deeper and more thorough than just saying that you provided value. It requires you to take this perspective of your customer and say, if I'm going to, bring this in, what do I have to do? And my wife and I recently bought a new car about a year ago, and it's an EV.
Oh,
And when we were researching our purchase choice, one of the questions that we both had was, would I have to upgrade our home electrical infrastructure to put a fast charger in my garage? Because that was going to increase the total cost of ownership. Now, it turns out that if you trickle feed the electricity, you can get away with the normal electricity. It just takes a lot longer to charge. And if you need a fast charge, you go to one of the places near our house. And we're lucky. We live in Silicon Valley, so there's charging stations nearby. But if you were to be in a remote place in Germany, or a remote place in Europe, or a remote place in America, your total cost of ownership of that electric vehicle might include putting in a new electrical circuit.
yeah. Uh, which EV did you end up with? I'm just being curious because I'm kind of a car guy, especially for EVs.
Well, I have 4 kids, but my kids are older now and they've moved out. So we had a minivan, and because I had a huge family and I needed
Hmm.
space. But now with the kids out, we drove everything, and it was really my wife's choice. It was more her car. So we drove everything we could try. I mean, every single EV that was available, from Genesis and Polestar to Tesla to everything.
Hmm.
And what we found that we liked the best, and what my wife liked the best, was the Chevy Bolt. Um,
Really?
we love it. I mean,
I would have never guessed.
and I'm an unabashed proponent of this car. We love it. We love how it drives. We love its range and distance. We love its size. It's a
Hmm.
smaller car than what we've had, but we don't. It's just us now. We love it.
What
It's
a
it's
European choice. So it's not the Hummer EV
Oh God, no. Why would I get a Hummer when I don't need
or a
it? I mean,
Cybertruck.
yeah, no, it's so funny. Yeah, well, which are just so ugly. It's unbelievable. I mean, we have several Cybertrucks in Sunnyvale, but they're genuinely ugly. Um, and I know we're probably gonna get some comments on that. That's great. If you love the Cybertruck, God bless you. I mean, everyone has their own style and sense of preferences and taste. But like, for example, I remember when we were driving the Tesla, uh, we just couldn't stand the degree to which its automatic braking
Mm.
uh, worked, and how you couldn't really adjust it in a sensible way. Whereas the Bolt, its regenerative
Yeah.
braking was
Hmm.
just so much easier to manage. And um, yeah, I'm not a car guy, but I'm not a car person. I've had some very nice cars over the course of my life, and I've enjoyed them when I had them. What's your car? What car do you like, or what car do you want to drive?
Yeah, so I owned a couple of EVs. I had a BMW i3, which was the first electric car that I got. Um, that one was really, really cool. It was very compact, but it's very practical. So there was a ton of space in it. I could
Yeah,
carry my dog and everything, despite it being such a small car. It has no B pillar, which is always cool. It has the suicide doors. So it's a pretty cool car, but it charges at 50 kilowatts, which is quite low for nowadays standards. So I ditched
right.
it, and then I got a steel price for a Tesla Model S.
Okay.
It's like a long range 100D Raven, if for the nerds out there, if people know what that is. Um, and then Tesla stopped shipping the Model S to Europe because they were ramping up production for Plaid.
Right.
So the prices for the latest Model S went up. So I sold it almost 30% plus from what I bought it
Nice.
for. That was
Nice.
pretty cool. And
Nice.
I wanted to get another EV, but I wanted a BMW i4, but they told me that I would have to wait 3 years. So I ended up with a Tesla Model Y because I called Tesla and I said, "Hey, I want to buy a Tesla Model Y, black or white." Um, and they said, "Sure, just exchange the numbers and you can pick it up next week." And I was like, "That sounds way better than 3 years."
Yeah, yeah, it sounds way better. No, and it's not to deny that Teslas have certain, attractive qualities. But like I said, for us, the size, the shape, the driving
Yeah.
feel, just everything about the Bolt, and we couldn't be happier with the choice. We love it.
Hmm. Yeah. Because you asked what car I wanted to drive. Right now, I'm looking for a fun car to have on the side. So I went to a Lotus dealership. Oh man, we're
Ooh.
drifting off at the podcast. So
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
not into cars, I'm really really sorry. But I drove to a Lotus dealership and I sat into a Lotus Elise and a Lotus Exige. But I'm over 6 foot. I don't fit in that car.
Yeah,
I can't.
no, those are
I just don't. I look like one of the Flintstones. Like my head pops up the roof.
No, but they're beautiful cars and they are very fast and very fun. Yeah, the Exige is really nice. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm down with
definitely.
that.
That would have been my favorite, but who knows?
Right, right.
Who knows?
And they're all
Hey,
becoming software enabled and they're all
oh yeah,
becoming part of what we're talking about.
100%. 100%, especially since Geely took over Lotus and Geely is flooring it technology-wise on the Lotus. Isn't what it was. Lotus was at almost no interior. You sit on the floor,
Right.
make it as light as possible, and now
That's
you
right.
have those 5.1, 5.2 meter long ships that you could buy, the Lotus EVs, the SUV, the Electre, and I don't know, I don't care. Those things are preposterous. They're
Right.
just huge and heavy. Like
Right.
they're the
And we
opposite of
even
Lotus.
we even looked at a Rivian, which are pretty nice, but they're just huge too.
Yeah, but
Rivians
they're
are
beautiful.
huge. Yeah, yes. But
I would buy
enormous.
one if they would be available in Europe.
They're enormously big though. They're just enormous. They're just so big.
Hey, look, we made it to the 50-minute mark, and we're kind of drifting off here. If people want to learn more about software profit streams, if people want to reach out to you, ask more questions, and get the conversation going, where do people find you?
Well, I'm pretty accessible on social media, so I would tag me on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
Our website is www.profit-streams.com. I would also let people know that there is a educational component to this, and there's some consulting component. And I am a big believer in native language delivery of complex topics. People think more clearly and they think more accurately in their native language. So we've developed a partner program. We have a wonderful and growing set of global partners around the world, several already in Europe with more coming. So we would invite people who want to take advantage of profit streams to come to our website. You could either come directly to us at Applied Frameworks, or you could check out with our partners, and those are growing and important. And of course, get the book and see what happens. We may be releasing some software soon about helping people make good pricing and licensing choices.
Ooh, sounds like we have to do another episode then.
Yeah, after we get it out there.
Awesome, man. Hey, Luke, it was so cool chatting with you. Oh, before we end this episode, we still
Yeah.
have the question of you have to pick a genre for your song. I mean, people listening to this already heard like part of the intro, but we recording this haven't heard any of it. So you can now pick a genre for the AI song about the episode.
Yeah, so you mentioned that, and then my mind was racing because I do like so many different kinds of music. I like country, I like R&B, I like rock that is kind of classic rock,
Hmm.
like range, that could be like, AC/DC and things like that. So from a high energy perspective, I thought about the choices, and I'm gonna go with rock, like Tom Petty, rock and roll, that kind of style. Give me rock and roll.
Awesome. Luke, thank you so much for being on the show. And now let's rock.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in into today's episode. I hope you got as much value out of this conversation with Luke as I did. If you're looking to understand the power of profit streams and how to truly connect value to profits, Luke's new book, Software Profit Streams, is a must read. You can connect with Luke on LinkedIn or visit profitstreams.com for more information. Check out the show notes, I will provide all the links below. And as always, if you enjoyed the episode, be sure to like, subscribe, share. Until next time, keep chasing value, keep creating impact, and stay stellar. Bye.
Luke Hohmann's in the house, let's set the stage. Talking profit streams, gotta turn another page. Been with Agile since the early days. First conference building tools, making waves. Says we're lost in value talk, we're stuck on repeat. We're Profit is the language when you really want to lead. Build something good, make it last for long. If you can't pay the bills, the work is all gone. Profit streams on the Stellar Work Show. It's about pricing right, it's about the value you know. Don't just keep adding features till the line gets lean. Gotta find that balance, yeah, we're chasing profit streams. From Silicon Valley to Germany streets, companies struggling to make the numbers meet. Growth ain't just magic, it's a cost that needs a plan. Forget that and you'll watch it slip right through your hands. Looks at Scrum Masters, coaches, devs and more. You all play a part in keeping profit at the core. Too many get cut, they can't prove their worth. Make the business better, profit's the sign of rebirth. Profit streams, yeah, that's the name of the game. It's about creating something that'll last and sustain. Agile is more than process, it's the whole damn scene. On the Stellar Work Show, we're chasing profit streams. We're chasing profit streams. Don't be fooled by what the giants do. Can't just copy Google when their profits outgrew. Gotta know your own numbers, make the choices that last. Luke's here to guide us, gotta learn from the past. Don't fall for feature traps, he said it'll drag you down. Every function costs, gotta think it through somehow. Focus on segments, find what people pay. Divide it up and make the profits stay. Profit streams, Luke's preaching it clear. Sustainable pricing through each passing year. From packaging the licensing, feature strategies keen. On the Stellar Work podcast, we're building profit streams. Now it's up to you, make it real, make it true. It's a system, not a number. Profits built by what you do. Stellar Work's got the answers, Luke showed us the means. So keep rocking, keep building, keep chasing those profit streams. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by lots of coaches, devs and more. You will broke your butter work and chasing those profit streams. Don't be fooled by what the giants, devs and more. You will play a part in keeping profit at the core. Too many get cut, they can't prove their worth. Make the business better, profits the sign of rebirth. On the Stellar Work Show, we're chasing profit streams.